In the opening scene, Gordon wakes in a jolly mood to prepare breakfast for his girlfriend Sophie before she wakes up. After several burnt attempts, he finally serves her the meal. Sophie wakes up to the aroma of burnt toast. She finds her boyfriend holding a tray containing breakfast and smiles as he moves over to feed her some. Gordon begins to wish he had made cereal, as he can tell that she doesn't like the meal he made. His girlfriend pulls him close and wishes him a happy last day of school, as they will be in the Adirondacks in a few days. They are excited about the things they will do, especially getting laid. Gordon suggests they go ahead and begin the intimacy part already. He jumps on his girlfriend, who is also in the mood. The couple kiss each other passionately as they throw their clothes and other hindrances on the bed away. After the hot romantic session, the duo set out to their place of work. Gordon arrives at the school where he teaches English literature and begins taking his class, while Sophie is on and about her duties as a chef. She stops by a store to get some items and finds her ex-colleagues Ruby and Vinny, who bring her some news. Later, she drops by Gordon's school to inform him that she's just been asked to interview for the executive chef position at the Chateau Frontenac in Quebec City. Sophie explains that Ruby Collins has this huge deal, and she was Ruby's sous chef, so she's just inviting 3 chefs including herself to assist her in refining her menu, and then she will decide who gets the job. Gordon encourages her to accept the offer, as it is everything she has ever worked for, and she can't miss such an opportunity. However, Sophie is worried it might affect their vacation upstate, especially if she gets the job. After their conversation, Gordon rushes over to his dad's place. The writer goes on and on about the writer's block he has been experiencing for 2 months now, but Gordon brings the old man to a halt, as he has limited time to get back to the school. He informs his dad of Sophie's offer, and he has never been so sure of being with anyone else but her. He requests to have his mom's ring so he can do the needful in sealing his relationship with her. Peter congratulates his son for being super smart and making a move to get Canadian citizenship, but Gordon brings to his attention the fact that Sophie is his soulmate, and it's not an immigration ploy whatsoever. He dashes into his father's room to go search for the ring, since the old man chooses now of all time in the world to get inspiration on how to end the chapter of his novel. Sophie receives a call from her mother, who is excited to have them around. She inquires if her daughter has informed Gordon of everything there is to know about Ruby. Sophie intentionally conceals some things from Gordon, and she doesn't want to discuss all of that with her mom. So, she quickly dismisses the conversation and ends the call. She falls on the chair and breathes heavily. Gordon gets back to class and shows his great-grandmother's ring to his student. They all share their opinions. He informs them that contrary to what they say about the ring being rusty, it is actually a diamond that had survived the torrent of the sea when his grandmother came all the way from Ireland aboard the Titanic. The school bell rings, indicating the end of the day's class. He bids his students a wonderful summer holiday and quickly hurries off to the airport. Gordon has not been on a plane ever since he was 13, and the idea of flying now terrifies him. He talks continuously in a bid to get his mind off, but Sophie complains his noise is distracting her. He takes out a relaxant his dad had given him and swallows it, hoping it'll help him relax. A few hours later, they arrive at the airport, and Gordon is reacting strangely to the med he took. Sophie calls Peter, and she's shocked to hear him say that he had given Gordon a Quaalude instead of a Valium. She ends the call and tries to talk Gordon into controlling himself while she goes to explain to her parents. Upon seeing her parents, the excitement in the air is quite palpable as Sophie lets go of the wheelchair Gordon is sitting on. To their surprise, Gordon is already creating a scene, and Sophie has to start explaining the situation to her parents. After he has received proper treatment, Gordon joins his French-speaking in-laws and then apologizes to Jeanette and Alphonse for his outburst earlier. He requests for them to start over and assists them in packing up their luggage so they can head home. All through the ride home, Gordon is in awe of the beautiful sceneries and buildings which he only hears about in history. They finally arrive at the house, and Sophie excitedly jumps out of the car to go embrace her family members, who had come out to welcome her. She calls on Gordon and makes the introduction of each family member. He walks over to her granny Mammy to kiss the matriarch's cheek and unfortunately kisses her lips in the process. He apologizes to everyone, while Mammy mistakes him for Rogers back in the early days of their relationship. Sophie explains that Mammy has dementia, and a nervous Gordon starts explaining about his demented uncle. The rest of the family walks inside, leaving him out there. He turns back towards the car to go get the bags when he sees the swan named Cuckoo. He tries to play nice, but Cuckoo ends up chasing him all over the place until much later. After the chase, Gordon brings the bags into the house and narrates all that happened to him. Sophie apologizes to him and directs him to her brother's room, where they will be staying, since he doesn't need her to help him with the bags. Gordon gets into Junior's room and sees lots of cool martial arts stuff. He picks up a samurai sword, and Junior suddenly appears before him. Gordon's understanding of French is quite good, even though he doesn't speak French. So, Junior and his sister's American boyfriend get along well, especially when he strikes an agreement with Gordon, who promises to assist him with English lessons, since he needs it in his quest to become a cop. Later, Sophie joins her mother in the kitchen, and while they are both arguing over the amount of ingredients, her sister Juliette joins the conversation. Juliette brings up the topic of Sophie and her ex-lover Ruby, and their mother is surprised that she kept such a secret from Gordon. Jeanette tells her daughters that she thinks Sophie might just be playing with fire. Sophie assures them that she plans on telling Gordon after she gets the offer, because if she tells him now, it will just make him unnecessarily anxious. That evening, the family takes their seats around the dinner table as they eat while chatting and discussing various subjects. The boys are talking about hockey, and when they ask Gordon's opinion about the game, he confesses that he doesn't follow the game. The family suddenly goes quiet, realizing that he has no single interest in their French hockey club. Gordon starts talking nervously as usual, but the rest of the family covers it up by conversing loudly in French. The doorbell rings and Sophie gets the door. To her surprise, Ruby has come to visit them with a bottle of wine. She lets Ruby in, and before long the family starts familiarizing and reconnecting with her. She involves Gordon in the conversation to know how he's going to cope without Sophie, who will be locked away in the castle with her. Gordon innocently spills that he will be teaching Junior when they are gone. Alphonse's mood changes on hearing that Junior will be taking the exam again, instead of working on the family's farm. Junior and his father get into an argument, and Alphonse directly insults his 26-year-old son, who is still living in his house. Junior cries out and leaves the dining table for them. That night in the bedroom, Gordon feels really bad because he's been in Quebec City for just 6 hours and he has been interrogated by the Fed, almost made out with Mammy, and now he betrayed Junior. Sophie cheers him up and asks him not to think too much about the entire incident. They soon start flirting and kissing each other even after Mammy comes to search for something. The next day, Alphonse drives Sophie to where she will be taking her interview. On the ride, they get talking about Gordon, and Sophie spots a new name of a farm belonging to a family she knows. Her father reveals that the local farmers can't compete with the price of the new farm. It's so bad that if things don't change, he might have to sell his farm next year. Alphonse reveals that he needs Junior's assistance, which is why he's been hard on the young man lately. They arrive at the venue. Sophie bids her dad goodbye and walks into the building. Meanwhile, Gordon wakes up and reads the note Sophie dropped for him. He smiles and prepares to step out of the room. As he is walking towards the stairs, he spots a door with the letter S on it. He believes it's Sophie's room, so he decides to take a look inside. Sophie's memory is littered all around the room with pictures and several other things belonging to her. He sees a book with the initials R and S, so he decides to check through the album. Gordon smiles as he looks through the photos of Ruby and Sophie, until he finally comes across a photo where the ladies look like they just made out. He reads the writing on it and instantly freezes with shock. Meanwhile, Sophie follows behind Malcolm, the manager and minority owner of Ruby. He leads her to the kitchen where she meets two other chefs, Frederick and Antoine. Ruby soon joins them and gives them a test to check out their culinary skills. At the house, Gordon calls his dad to inform him of everything he found out in Sophie's room. He believes that she has kept her relationship with Ruby a secret from him in a bid not to hurt him. Peter thinks his son is too naive and gives him a series of advice, which he feels is the worst pep talk of his life. Gordon turns and finds Alphonse in front of his cattle shed. He invites him to come over and Gordon ends the call with his dad. He quietly walks into the structure until he gets into the butcher room where Alphonse is sharpening some knives. Alphonse asks him to go grab a lamb which they will use for dinner. Gordon tries to wriggle his way out of it, but he insists on him getting the lamb, so he has no other option than to obey. Gordon's conversation with the lamb doesn't go so well as he starts calling Alphonse for help. Minutes later, Alphonse cuts the lamb into pieces while Gordon packs the pieces for storage in the freezer. He apologizes for causing a rift between him and his son, but the old man doesn't care much as he threatens Gordon to stay out of Sophie's life. Gordon later leaves the shed only to be chased around by Cuckoo once again. He runs all around until he gets to a safe spot and finds Junior practicing some martial arts. Junior hands him a bottle of drink, and the duo sit down to converse. He reveals that he has no money to pay for his tutelage, but Gordon doesn't mind, as long as Junior gets to tell him about Ruby and Sophie's relationship. The duo strikes a deal, and Gordon uses a video game to begin his English lessons with Junior. The duo soon starts watching the fight, forgetting their initial plan. Towards the end of the day's work, they are all by the bar having some drinks to cool off, and Ruby apologizes to Sophia for being hard on her earlier on. She reveals that she brought Sophie into the team for her talent, and not because of their history. She apologizes for the way things ended between them, as she was the one who cheated and got Sophie heartbroken. The ladies talk about other things, and Sophie reveals her father's struggle with the farm. Ruby orders more drinks as it seems like Sophie needs more of it. Sophie gets home late into the night. She joins Gordon on the bed, and he soon starts talking about how his day went, until he drops the bombshell. She tries to explain to him why she has to keep her relationship with Ruby a secret. The duo gets into a little argument until it ends up in them making out. The following morning, Gordon gets up earlier than usual since he has been in Quebec City. Alphonse and Jeanette come to meet him, and he excitedly offers them a coffee before requesting to drive Sophie to work, using Alphonse's truck. After much hesitation, Alphonse grants his request, and in no time, Gordon hits the road with Sophie. He drives into traffic, leaving Sophie with no other option but to get on her feet. She arrives at work late, and just as Ruby is threatening to discard her if she ever comes late again, she sees Gordon making his way in. He gives them quite a performance, and Ruby angrily asks Sophie to tell her boyfriend to exit her kitchen. At the house, Gordon is playing card games with the Tremblay ladies when his eyes suddenly get a hold of the ring on Mammy's finger. He excuses himself and rushes upstairs to check the box, hoping his ring is still there, but it turns out otherwise. He goes back downstairs and attempts to get his ring back without alerting the others. Unfortunately, Junior comes to call him out. Junior takes Gordon to a wrestling house, and he is surprised to find out that Junior also takes part in the fights. Later on, he is announced as the winner, and in no time another challenger comes up on stage. To Gordon's surprise, Alphonse will be fighting against his son. The father makes a deal promising to let Junior write his English test if he wins, and if the case is otherwise, Junior will have to work at the farm with him. They soon start fighting, and Gordon runs into the ring trying to prevent the father and son from wrestling each other. He accidentally knocks out Alphonse with his elbow, and he gets taken aback by the way the crowd, including Junior, is cheering him as the winner of the fight. That night, Jeanette massages her husband's face while Gordon continually apologizes for hitting him. Ruby comes home with Sophie and decides to share the news of their episode, which they will be shooting right in the Tremblay family farm. The news gets the whole family excited, and they all gather around to hug each other. A while later, Ruby takes her leave and they all step out to see her off except Gordon. Sophie comes back in and he expresses her disappointment in her for keeping late night with her ex. The conversation between them gets tense when he finds out that she's been discussing her family's challenge with Ruby, and he's totally unaware of it. They soon resolve the quarrels and get on the bed, about to make out when Mammy walks in on them. Gordon takes her back to her room and puts her to sleep. He attempts to pull off his ring, and Juliet walks right into the room carrying her baby. She discharges him from singing a lullaby to her grandmother and watches as he leaves the room. Later that night in Alphonse's room, his wife is reading one of Peter's books, and she thinks it's quite erotic. Alphonse seeks her opinions about Ruby and Sophie. He thinks Sophie will be happier with Ruby than she is with Gordon. Jeanette doesn't share the same opinion as him. Instead, she requests that he read Peter's book and take a few notes from it. The following day, Gordon is having a session with Junior, but he can't concentrate because he's uncomfortable with his girlfriend staying out late into the night with her ex. He declines Junior's advice to hurt Sophie, and almost immediately, he receives a call from her. He dashes out, abandoning the session upon hearing that Sophie has the day off. He meets up with his girlfriend in town, and they get to spend quite an interesting time together, exploring different places around. She reveals that she got the Chateau to get them a room tonight. They later visit a restaurant managed by Solange, who is the first person to make Sophie a sous chef. Solange gives them a table and tells them not to worry about paying, as their orders will be on the house. The duo settles in and are about to enjoy their drinks when Ruby walks in to interrupt their romantic moment. She introduces her bestie, Avi Donaldson, who is a major food critic, and in no time, they take over Sophie and Gordon's date. Gordon is uncomfortable and unhappy that they are crashing into the moment he's supposed to spend with his lover. He soon excuses himself to go pee, and Avi walks right behind him almost immediately. Avi unveils that Ruby is one woman who goes after whatever she has set her eyes on. His words make Gordon feel creepy, as fear crawls into his heart that Ruby must have eyes on Sophie. He walks back right out, intending to propose to his woman right away, before he loses her to another woman. Unfortunately, he finds her crying, and he's even more shocked to hear that Mammy has passed away. They get back home, and while the others are downstairs mourning, Gordon walks into Mammy's room and attempts to remove his mother's ring from her finger. After much struggle, he finally gets the ring. He quickly drags the body back on the bed, but, in the process, the ring falls. Thankfully, he's able to get Mammy's body back on the bed before Alphonse walks into the room. The following day, the family gathers as they lay Mammy to rest. Ruby gives a rendition in her honor, and after the burial, the entire family enters back into the house. While everyone is going about talking to the visitors, who are there to honor Mammy, Jeanette hands Sophie her mother's recipe book. Gordon walks over to Ruby and suggests they reschedule the shoot so the family can mourn, but she ignores him and walks over to Alphonse, repeating Gordon's words like it's her idea. Alphonse insists the show goes on, as Mammy would have loved it too. The next day, the show kickstarts and Ruby is everywhere doing her work. Gordon is uncomfortable with everything, but he pretends to be all right. During the duck hunt, he tries to impress them, but he mistakenly shuts down Cuckoo. Towards the end of the show, Ruby announces that Tremblay Farms will be the sole lamb supplier for her new restaurant at the Chateau Frontenac. The entire family is overjoyed with the news as she wraps up the show. That evening, everyone gathers around for a drink in the spirit of merriment, and Ruby announces that Sophie is the winner of the executive chef position. As they hug each other in excitement, Gordon is observing Ruby and Sophie's body language in his drunken state. He clanks his glass as well in a bid to call everyone's attention. Driven by jealousy, Gordon makes a scene insinuating Ruby only gave Sophie the position because they are still in love. Sophie feels humiliated and walks into the house. He runs after her, and he's still insistent on his point. Sophie asks him to leave as his words are hurting her. She believes she put in effort into getting the position, so he has no right to say such things to her. Gordon leaves the house and passes the night elsewhere. Meanwhile, Juliette decides to have a talk with her sister, hoping she understands that Gordon's actions are a result of the love he feels for her, and he is scared of losing her. The next day, Junior meets up with Gordon and gives his luggage to him at his request. Gordon wishes him luck with his test, and Junior thanks him for believing in him. He walks towards the test hall and then turns around to assure Gordon that his sister is still in love with him. Later in the evening, the family arrives at Ruby's new restaurant where the opening ceremony is taking place. It's the biggest night of Sophie's life, and she's busy working to ensure there's no mistake whatsoever. Seeing her family all out to support her brings her great joy and courage to continue. At the other end of town, Gordon calls Peter to inform him that everything is over and he will be flying back to Brooklyn. Peter believes that his love for his son and his desire to keep Gordon within proximity has made his boy turn into a weakling. He encourages him to show up and get the woman of his dreams, instead of coming back home and spending the rest of his days a miserable man. An idea drops in Gordon's mind, and in no time, he dresses up in a pantaloon running towards the Chateau Frontenac. At the restaurant, the Tremblays are being served their meals when Ruby and Sophie walk over to them. Sophie asks about Gordon from her brother. She feels disappointed to find out that he must have left because he's heartbroken. Gordon arrives at the castle and attempts to cut the line, but he gets denied access. Left with no other option, he jumps over the fence and lands in the stable. He finds his way around, running in search of his woman. Ruby walks over to Sophie and talks her into letting Gordon go for good. Meanwhile, Gordon finds his way in, and Alphonse intercepts him. While he's trying to convince Alphonse that he loves Sophie and would want to marry her, his eyes fall on Ruby and Sophie kissing in the kitchen. Alphonse turns around to see what's catching his attention. He gently leads the petrified Gordon away. Sophie pulls away and asks about Ruby's action. Ruby blatantly reveals her true intentions and spews condescending comments about Sophie and her family. Sophie punches her nose and walks away from the kitchen as she tries to wrap her head around everything. Her father meets her halfway. He notices that she's shaky, so he informs her of everything that Gordon has seen, hoping it'll help her calm down. Junior walks towards them to reveal that he just checked online, and he finally passed the test. He's almost running out of breath, being so excited that he's going to be a cop. A few minutes later, the Tremblays, excluding Jeanette, are out on the street in search of Gordon. They meet Juliette, who informs them that he stole Ruby's car, and he's driving away. They all run towards a police vehicle and plead with the lady inside to give them a lift. Sophie explains that she needs to go after the love of her life, and the lady agrees to give them a hand. Gordon soon crashes into a building. Thankfully, the Tremblays are around to help take him to a hospital. The following day, he wakes up in the hospital, and right on his bed, Sophie is staring into his face. They talk about the previous night, and Sophie brings out his great-grandmother's ring. She proposes to him, and he is surprised to see her with the ring. Alphonse gets on his feet and gives Gordon his blessings to marry his daughter since it's important to him. Gordon smiles and slides the ring on Sophie's finger. Her brother and father watch as she happily climbs over Gordon, kissing him lovingly. 1 year of community service later, Gordon now teaches in the police academy, and a pregnant Sophie has a kitchen named after her grandmother. The entire family works together as Alphonse's farm is thriving. Peter visits them at the restaurant, and they are all bonding well as they remember Mammy.